Ok, y estos son los jueves con Kiyosaki, con toda la información que Robert Kiyosaki comparte. Mi nombre es Alfredo Culebro y formo parte del equipo de Robert Kiyosaki desde hace ya más de 15 años y Blair Singer, y estamos felices de estar aquí contigo y poder seguir avanzando. El día de hoy vamos a ver una entrevista que le hace Robert y Kim Kiyosaki a Simon Black, en donde el tópico principal es buscar la libertad de tu vida, buscar la libertad de tu vida. Una entrevista que me parece que no te puedes perder, en donde muchas de las ideas antiguas se pueden modificar, creencias que tenía, por ejemplo, yo dije, ok, esto tenemos que cambiarlo, y como siempre el toque de la experiencia de gente de altísimo nivel como Robert Kiyosaki, Kim Kiyosaki y también Simon Black, que va a estar con nosotros desde la ciudad, bueno, desde Chile, porque la ciudad en la que está a 100 kilómetros de la capital chilena. Les mando un gran abrazo, no se lo pueden perder. Aquí estamos en esta transmisión de Jueves con Kiyosaki.
The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Other people are traveling the world right now as a sovereign individual. So that's what we want to talk about, is the idea that we're only limited by our thoughts today. Yeah, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is, as you say, Robert, this can be your greatest asset or your greatest liability. And I'm seeing it every single day. People that are talking themselves out of their freedoms and talking themselves into basically imprisonment and entrapment and all of this. But the mind and your thoughts and your emotions make all the difference.
And what's really bad about how bad this is this will be coming out after Thanksgiving, but they're going to take Thanksgiving away. You know what I mean? Give me a break. I mean, the turkey is going to put a mask on the old turkey or something. What are they thinking? But anyway, with that, Simon Black, you're the sovereign man, like Jim Rogers was a sovereign man. Kim and I travel all over the world. We do business all over the world. So what shifted for you, Simon? Why did you say, I'm out of here. I'm going to be a free human being?
It was actually when I was in the military. And I will never forget the day, you probably remember it, when they brought Colin Powell out to testify to the United Nations and say, he's got those weapons. And I think a lot of people that night were looking at that saying, this is bullshit. And at that point it was obvious. And, and Powell, went on later and say, call that the biggest mistake of his life, a black eye, black stain on an otherwise impeccable career, and he was right. And I think he just sort of knew that it was, shaky and but just saluted and tried to play the good soldier and follow orders. But I think he had a lot of sort of moral and ethical misgivings about it. And a lot of people that night, and I was one of them, looked at it and said, no, this is wrong. It made me realize that
So Simon is a military information intelligence officer, and he knew what was really going on. And Colin Powell, explain who he is or was.
Well, Colin Powell at the time was the Secretary of State, but prior to that, a lot of people might be too young to remember, but he used to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the early 1990s. And so he was a famous guy. He had far and away the most credibility of anybody on the international stage in the Bush administration at the time. And so that's the reason they sent Colin Powell to the United Nations. Yeah, U.S. Army 4-star general. Yeah.
So that's the difference. And the reason I say that is because as a Marine pilot, we had to take orders from Washington, and we're flying in Vietnam and going, where are they getting their information from? This is not true. And so you were kind of in the same position, being an Army intelligence officer. And what you see and hear are not the same Washington saying.
Right, exactly. And so you're kind of looking at this, and that was when it really hit me. It's a lie. And they're about to go to war based on a lie. And it made me think, well, if they're lying about this, then what else are they lying about?
Amen.
Turned out to be quite a bit. Yeah, quite a bit. So that I went down this little rabbit hole of just, getting my hands on everything that I could, reading as much as I could of everything, not even stuff that I necessarily agreed with or disagreed with. I just wanted to read as much as I could to really expand my mind. And it's just what you guys were saying, Kim, that's really where it all starts. And to me, it's not necessarily even about travel or going out and seeing the world. It's really what you do here. It's what you do in your mind. And I think this is actually, not to dwell on what we were talking about earlier, but I think this is actually a big part of the problem today is that, you were saying, Robert, that it's the most divisive time that you can remember. And I think it's because really people they draw lines, they take sides, they're not willing to ever really have a discussion or concede anything or understand, the other side. And I think, to truly be, I think, an independent person, independent thinker, I think it's important to try and, at least get an understanding of as much as you possibly can and open your mind far beyond what's right in front of your face, whether it's your geography or your, personal ideology and so forth. And I kind of joke with people sometimes. I say, there's probably some things that I agree with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about. Now, for the life of me, I can't think of a single example, but who knows? Maybe we're both really irritated with the Dallas Cowboys right now. There's something we can agree about. I don't know. But I think, when people just say, they're sort of against people and against personalities and they sort of dig their heels in, what it really creates is an intellectual closed-mindedness. And I think that's when we stop growing as people, is when we close our mind off to other ideas, especially before you understand it well enough to be able to form an opinion and then, properly, render an opinion based on facts as opposed to, as opposed to just some gut feeling or opinion. So I think that's a big part of just being a sort of a sovereign person, is just being really independent-minded and open-minded and trying to learn as much as you can, even from people that you don't, think you might not agree with.
So we'll talk about, you have a second passport. And the reason that Simon puts on these fabulous programs, pre-COVID, of course, but every time I went to his programs, and of course they were not on U.S. soil for some reason, Simon, I can't understand why he didn't do that. But I would go offshore with Simon, and I would hear things that nobody should hear about, because most Americans, they're like this is, oh, no, don't tell me. And so I was at one of Simon's Sovereign Man conferences. He's talking about second passports and all this. And I was still at the stage going, what the heck's he talking about? I understood second passports, but I didn't really know why I should have one. And Kim and I are now looking at second passports, right, Kim?
Yes, absolutely. We just want options. We want options. And I want to say to your point too, Simon, about independent thinking is so lacking right now. And unfortunately, I think one of the problems too is so many people are acting off of opinions and not facts, and they're not even their own opinions. They don't even know what their opinion is, but it's all emotion. It's all of this craziness is driven by emotion, not independent thinking. And we often say one of the most important things you can do is think for yourself, question everything, which is what you did. And I think that's a great starting point to be a sovereign man or sovereign woman today. I think that's crucial.
It's what you said, Kim. It's just really about having another option. If you have, when you think about your passport confers citizenship, and your citizenship, basically entitles you to certain benefits and, in theory, also certain liabilities. Everybody that's a citizen in the United States has, certain benefits of being able to, live and work and so forth in the United States. And, that's a pretty big benefit. At the same time, you're also signed up for some pretty big liabilities, like your share of the $60+ trillion in financial liabilities that's owed by the U.S. federal government, your liability of the taxes that they want to charge in their sole discretion, whenever they want, all those sorts of things. You were talking about, our events and, the things that people don't really like to hear, and to be clear, there's things like second passports, they're 100% legal. There's nothing about it in the United States that's against the law. As a matter of fact, there's quite a body of law as well as executive orders that demonstrate it's 100% legal to have them, to acquire them. But certain things that are uncomfortable, for example, we stand on stage and, read directly from primary sources, for example, talk about things like Social Security and say, don't take my word for it. This is what the Treasury Secretary of the United States has to say, and this thing is going to be bankrupt, before the decade is out. They're going to, the trust funds are going to run out of money. This isn't me saying this. This is the Treasury Secretary of the United States. And, some of these things are very uncomfortable for people to hear because they sort of stick their head in the sand and think like, oh, when I retire, I'm going to do, they have all these plans for what they think their life is going to be. And, suddenly you would say, well, guess what? That's probably not going to happen, and there are a lot of these things that are facts, not opinions, that might actually throw a monkey wrench in that. So here are some potential solutions to that. And the idea behind a second passport is to say, well, you know what, instead of having all of my eggs in one basket, I'm going to start diversifying a little bit. And the second passport is really a way to diversify, because it means that no matter what happens, or no matter what happens, even things that whatever doesn't happen, you'll always have another place to go. You'll have another place where you can live and work and invest and start a business and bring your family and do anything that you want to do, that welcomes you with open arms. We have the right to do that. And I think for a lot of people, that benefit might have been interesting, but almost cerebral, academic. And then 2020 came around, and all of a sudden everybody was locked down in their homes, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't travel anywhere. But if you had a second passport, you could, right? You couldn't go to this place or that place, so forth. But if you had a second passport, suddenly these other countries saying, well, of course we'll welcome, if you're a citizen, of course we'll welcome you, right? So you could do these things with a second passport. I think 2020 has sort of showed that the benefit of having those things is actually pretty phenomenal.
I want to think while Simon's still on, because we're running out of time here. I go to his Sovereign Man conference, and I'm listening to he had all these different people from all over the world, and they're pitching their deal as to which passport to get. And I'm sitting there going, holy mackerel. Well, if you come to our country, we'll give you this deal and this. And I'm going, holy, it was like an auction. But the best one was the one from Georgia. And Georgia is a former Soviet satellite and all this stuff. But the first thing I noticed is the people who actually have been in communist countries like Georgia and Bulgaria and those countries, they're the most anti-communism. They're the most vehemently anti-communism. And, Kim and I have friends who escaped from Hungary back in the '56 Hungarian Revolution. They hate communism. And where Kim is right now, there's a huge Cuban contingency. They hate communism, and they hate Ocasio-Cortez on top of it, and she's one of them. You know what I mean? It's like, but when I was at the Sovereign Man, this woman from Georgia stands up there. She says, Georgia's the best. I'm going, que pasa? Why is Georgia the best? She says, well, when the Russians came to our capital, we stopped them at the gates. And I went, that's a sales pitch I never heard before. They can stop the Russians at the gate. I said, Georgia went high on my list of passports. Anyway, that's the kind of stuff that Simon puts on. And I hope you get back to putting those conferences on again, because we really do need to open our minds. Any comments on that, Kim?
Well, I just wanted one comment. And actually, in terms of your events, are you doing online events? Are you doing digital events?
We do for, we have some online things from time to time for our certain of our members, and I think we'll be in pretty short order getting back to the in-person stuff. We have most of our members. We actually kind of did some polls, and most people said, yeah, we'd love to do something in person. The problem is just finding the place to do it, because everybody's just locked down. You get these hotels that say, well, you can do an event here, but everybody's got to be 6 feet apart, and you can't sit down and have a dinner and all these sorts of things. So it's a complicated time to try and do events, but I think we're going to get it figured out here in the next couple of months.
Here's the question I wanted to ask too, is I know you're a very optimistic person and you see opportunities. And so given all that's happening, do you see opportunities coming out of this, or that are existing now to the average person? What could somebody do today?
Yeah, look, of course there are. There always are. You could look at I was actually talking to Kenny about this not too long ago. I mean, somebody's going to have to figure out what to do with all this commercial real estate, for example. I mean, there's a lot of office property that is never going to be used again, at least for office purposes. And so that needs to be repurposed somehow. And I think somebody's going to make a ton of money on that sort of thing. But I mean, no matter what happens in the world, I think there's always opportunity. And there's companies that fall into bankruptcy, and there's opportunities to pick up very high quality assets. out of bankruptcy. I think there's always going to be opportunity out there. And it's one thing to say, I'm just going to stay home and be angry, but it's another to say, you know what, I'm going to change my way of thinking and go out and look for the opportunities. I think that's a better approach.
That could be the biggest opportunity of all for somebody to say, hey, maybe I better do something different. Maybe I better look at a new way of thinking. Maybe I better change some of the things I've been doing. This could be this alone could be the opportunity.